This video is a continuation of the RTCR Level 1 Assessment tutorial. In this tutorial, we will show you how to use the results of the assessment to identify issues and corrective actions. Please turn to Part 5 in the Level 1 Assessment form. You can see this page consists of a table that is repeated. Let's look at the first table. You can see that it asks for a section and question number in the top line. This is referring to Part 4. For every question in Part 4 that is answered in a shaded box, it is considered an issue and must be transferred to Part 5 here and explained. Let's take a look at doing this. For the sake of an example, let's say that our system identified 3 gray box issues. First, in Part 4, Section A for the source, the system determined in Question 3 that they do not have a sanitary well seal. You can see that No was checked, which is shaded gray behind the checkbox. The gray shading is part of the form and is meant to show that checking the box is a potential issue. Also, in Part 4, Section E, Treatment, the system checked Yes for Item 1, indicating that there had been an interruption in treatment. The system had found that the UV bulb had failed because it was overdue for replacement. Also in Part 4, Section E, the system had checked No to item number 5 because their drain line from the softener does not have an air gap. You can see that No is in a gray box in this case. So now we know that A3, E1, and E5 from Part 4 are gray box issues. We flip back to Part 5, and in the first table, we write A for section and 3 for the question number in the top line of the table. In the second table, we write E for the section and 1 for the question number. And in the third table, we write E for the section and 5 for the question number. Next, for each issue, we write a short description in the issue description column of the table. For example, for A3, we described here that the well does not have a proper sanitary seal. For E1, we explained that the UV bulb had failed. It was due to be replaced in June of 2016, but it was not replaced. For E5, we explained that there is not an air gap between the drain line and the sewer pipe. The question below the description box asks if this is a sanitary defect or not. What does this mean? First, anything that provides a pathway of contamination into your system is a sanitary defect. Here's a diagram of our example Transient Non-Community Water System. A pathway of contamination could be a non-sanitary well seal or perhaps poor grading around the well. These would be considered sanitary defects because they are pathways of contamination. A cross-connection is also a sanitary defect because it provides a pathway of contamination. Sanitary defects also include a failure in a barrier against contamination that is already in place. For example, disinfection treatment such as a UV light is a barrier to contamination. So, if your UV light is not operating properly, it is a sanitary defect. And also, one that you might not think of as a barrier is system pressure. System pressure prevents backflow and the entry of contaminants. Therefore, low or no pressure is a sanitary defect. If you forget what a sanitary defect is, the definition is in the instructions to the assessment form under Part 5 as shown. For our example, A3 is a sanitary defect because a well without a sanitary seal can allow contaminants to enter directly through the well cap. E1 is definitely a sanitary defect since the UV bulb had failed, which is a breakdown in treatment. E5 is also a sanitary defect. The system's drain line from the water softener goes directly to the sewer without an air gap. This is a cross-connection because it is a direct connection between potable water and a source of contamination. If an issue is identified as a sanitary defect, then the corrective action and completion schedule column in the table must be completed. Let's look at our example again. The first thing we identified was the lack of a sanitary well seal. This is a sanitary defect, so we have to determine a corrective action. The corrective action is relatively easy. The system will get a proper sanitary well seal and install it. Typically, a reputable well driller will be able to install a proper sanitary well cap. The system is giving themselves 2 weeks to get the new cap installed. For our example, we are saying that the system completes the assessment on 11/14/2016, so 2 weeks is 11/28. Please note that when you complete the form, you must identify a date that the issue will be fixed by. You will then be held to this date, and your system will receive a violation if the date is not met. Depending on the issue, your time frame for fixing the issue can vary, but DEP will be looking for a reasonable time frame based on what is involved in fixing the issue and the immediate health concern. For example, for replacing a sanitary well seal, it shouldn't take more than 30 days. The second sanitary defect identified was the fact that the UV bulb had failed. It was due for its annual replacement in June of 2016, but it was not replaced. This was found on 11/19 when the owner received the total coliform sample results. The owner had immediately replaced the bulb because he had a spare. DEP needs to see this explained in the corrective action column, even though the corrective action was already done, such as shown here. The system also notes that they are now aware of the need to replace the bulb annually and that the intensity meter will be checked once a week. The last issue identified as a sanitary defect in our example was E5 because there was not an air gap to prevent backflow in the water softener drain line. In our example, the owner is going to have a plumber who's familiar with the plumbing code install the discharge line with a proper gap that is twice the diameter of the discharge pipe. For the completion schedule, the system is committing to having the issue fixed by 12/5/2016. Once you have identified all the gray box issues and determined any necessary corrective actions and time frames, it is time to sign the form and submit it to DEP. If you flip to Section 6, Verification, you'll see that you must sign the form along with a responsible official. This may be the same person if you are the assessor and the owner of the facility. Once the assessment and form are complete, you need to submit the form to the appropriate DEP district office with jurisdiction over your public water system. The address list can be found on pages 10 to 12 of the assessment form. The completed form must be submitted to DEP within 30 days of triggering the Level 1 assessment. For questions with completing the form, please contact your local DEP sanitarian. Again, you can use the address list on pages 10 to 12 for the local DEP office information.